Hello and welcome to Frank Philosophy, where we speak frankly about philosophy. And today we'll be talking about the Italian Renaissance philosopher
And the silence teaches her what words never could.
Oh, God.
This man doesn't
no.
chase. He doesn't explain why he was hurt.
Get out of here.
He doesn't beg for...
Sorry about that. Today we'll be talking about Niccoló Machiavelli, the Italian Renaissance philosopher, most famous for his work titled
The Man Who Masters His External Positioning, who
another
understands
one?
how power
No,
flows
get out of here.
and how
Go,
perception
shoot,
shapes
shoot.
reality.
Sorry. Niccoló Machiavelli, most famous for his work called The Prince, which is basically a handbook for rulers, and gives all sorts of
This is where Machiavellianism
another one.
Applied to attraction dynamics.
Oh, God.
converge
This
into
principle
They just keep coming.
feeling
Oh, it's like
There's
YouTube is
often
being
a
taken over by these AI slop about Machiavelli giving bad advice about how to pick up women or something. Ugh. We gotta just deal with this.
Hey warriors, welcome back to the channel.
So if you've spent very much time on YouTube over the last year or so and have at least a passing interest in philosophy, you've probably come across videos like these.
I watched my best friend destroy himself being the good guy.
These are quintessential AI slop videos. An AI-generated voice reading AI-generated text over an AI-generated image with AI-generated captions. And the ones that have caught my attention lately are these videos that supposedly have something to do with Niccoló Machiavelli, dark psychology, some other such nonsense for like building self-confidence or whatever. There are like hundreds of them, and some of them have hundreds of thousands of views. It's kind of crazy. And all of them like promise secret hidden wisdom from a supposed Renaissance evil genius about how to like pick up girls or something? I don't know. It's kind of gross. And they're relying on the good name of Niccoló Machiavelli to do it. Now this stuff is dumb. Like, not worth anyone's time dumb. But I'm making this video because it's not just dumb. In fact, it's worse than dumb. It's at the same time misleading, and it's also potentially dangerous because it's targeted towards a potentially vulnerable subsection of the population with real issues who are really looking for advice on how to improve their lives. And these videos just do a disservice to these people. So today we're gonna savage some AI slop videos about Machiavelli for the good of humanity, not because I actually want to do this. But if you learned something in this video and you like philosophy content on YouTube, be sure to check out some of my other videos and subscribe and leave a like if you want. Now I have two major complaints about these AI videos about Machiavelli, supposedly. The first is that they just have nothing to do with Machiavelli's writings. And the places where Machiavelli is borderline relevant to what they're saying, he very often is arguing for exactly the opposite point of what's being said in the video. So yeah, a lot of the times these videos are just dead wrong about the source material. And secondly, the advice in the video usually falls into one or more of three categories. It's either just bad advice, it's so obvious why would anyone want to hear it, or it just doesn't make any sense, and it's just like impossible to decode. It's just flat out nonsense. Okay, let's start with the easy critique, which is just that these videos have nothing to do with Machiavelli. Now, for a quick recap on Machiavelli, he was an Italian philosopher active during the Renaissance period, most famously known for The Prince, which is a handbook for rulers. And it was written in 1513 for a real prince, Lorenzo de' Medici. And the goal of the book was to teach Lorenzo how to acquire and hold political power. That was the goal. It's a manual for rulers. It's not a manual for romantic partnerships. And Machiavelli would probably think it's really weird that people are using his book to figure out how to pick up women or get in a romantic relationship. But more on that later. And there are really good reasons why people still read him. I mean, calling someone Machiavellian usually means calling them cold, strategic, and willing to do morally compromised things to achieve their goals. And Machiavelli really does make a pretty good case for doing some of this stuff in The Prince. But these videos aren't actually drawing on his ideas. Instead, they're just using his name as a brand for marketing some sort of vague contrarian wisdom. So to make this point, I've just selected 3 principles from a recent video with 36,000 views at the time of this recording called 7 Brutal Truths About Attraction Most Men Never Learn, Machiavellian Psychology. Ooh. But in spite of claiming inspiration from Machiavelli, these principles have nothing to do with his ideas at all. So one of the principles the video suggests is to cultivate polarizing authenticity. This just means be a polarizing person, hold strong opinions, and don't try to please everyone. Be willing to be disliked. And it even leans on the quote that you may have heard of but has nothing to do with Machiavelli, that the man who tries to please everyone ends up pleasing no one. This is not in The Prince and has nothing to do with Machiavelli. And that's fine, I guess. It's actually maybe good advice for people who need to hear it. But it has nothing to do with Machiavelli. And in fact, what Machiavelli actually says is pretty much the opposite of that. If you don't believe me, here's the quote. In chapter 18 of The Prince, Machiavelli writes, "So a ruler must be extremely careful not to say anything that doesn't appear to be inspired by the 5 virtues. He must seem and sound wholly compassionate, wholly loyal, wholly humane, wholly honest, and wholly religious. There is nothing more important than appearing to be religious." Pause the video, read that again. Machiavelli's actual advice is that in order to maintain political power, the prince must publicly project universally accepted virtues. He must appear to be virtuous in order to maintain the respect of the people around him. He must appear to share the values that everyone else holds. And that's the whole point of chapter 18 of The Prince, that upholding the appearance of conventional virtue is strategically essential. And in fact, if you went out and just acted in accordance with your own most extreme and radical ideas all the time, you probably wouldn't have the respect of anybody. They would just think you're crazy or a jerk or didn't fit in. So the advice given in this video is really just a hyperbolic piece of modern self-help advice with Machiavelli's face stamped on it, even though it has nothing to do with Machiavelli and in fact says the exact opposite of what his actual advice is. Another one of these principles from this video is called maintaining a calibrated presence. This just means, in the context of the video, strategically varying your availability. So sometimes ignore her, other times be present. Demonstrate controlled unpredictability. Now this almost has something to do with Machiavelli, but also not really. And it's kind of flipped on its head in the way that it does. It's pretty much the opposite of what Machiavelli actually says, once again. So Machiavelli does talk about the importance of flexibility, of the importance of occasionally compromising on your values to get a better result. Or just more generally, being able to adapt to the situation and just respond in whatever way it demands, even if it means going against your stated values. But the thing is, and here's the critical part, that flexibility is supposed to be private, not public. It's about reneging on promises, breaking treaties, and doing the strategic thing while appearing to be honorable. The whole idea is that you violate the principle in private, but project the principle in public. Meaning, once again, you're supposed to act as if you were pleasing everyone, even if you're doing sneaky stuff on the side. This video has flipped the idea completely. It's advising people to perform calculated unpredictability publicly, to visibly withdraw and reappear, in order to manipulate somebody else's emotional state. And this is exactly what Machiavelli says will get you killed. Public erratic behavior doesn't project the appearance of a stable, well-adjusted person that commands authority in a political situation. You're supposed to be constantly giving the impression of being a reliable person, of having a steady and reliable character. And that's the thing that in chapter 18 is supposed to be maintained above all else, according to Machiavelli. So this idea of demonstrating controlled unpredictability is bad Machiavelli and it's bad relationship advice. So the final principle, which is supposedly the best and the most counterintuitive and is going to blow your mind, is total self-acceptance. It says that you must accept yourself fully, completely, without conditions, including the parts of you that society might label as negative. Now, set aside the question of whether or not that's good advice. Spoiler alert, it's not. It's really bad advice. But let's pretend that it's the best piece of advice ever written. Does it have anything to do with Machiavelli? And the answer is no, not at all. Not even a little bit. In fact, it's the opposite of what Machiavelli says. Because, once again, as I said already, the prince, according to Machiavelli, doesn't radically accept himself. He adapts to the situation. He wears masks. He performs virtue. The whole strategic architecture of the prince depends on the gap between who the ruler actually is and the kind of image that he projects. The fact that there's a difference between the two is what makes the prince an effective ruler. And the actual virtue that Machiavelli is emphasizing here is the kind of confident flexibility that lets you adjust your behavior to the situation without falling into a crisis of identity. The book encourages you to act with propriety, to recognize the needs of the situation, to perform virtue when it's needed, and to go against virtue when it would lead to a better outcome. And this flexibility and adaptability isn't evidence of a fragile sense of self. Instead, it's the opposite. It's the result of having such a confident sense of who you are that even if you have to do something that you wouldn't normally do, you don't feel existentially threatened by it. And that's just healthy, sensible confidence, not total, uncompromising self-acceptance. And it's also what real adult relationships require. Adjusting your behavior to a context, knowing when to compromise, knowing when to insist that your way is the right way. This is all just what normal, well-adjusted people do. And it has nothing to do with Machiavelli. Okay, so what these videos are calling Machiavellian isn't actually Machiavellian. That's one problem. They're just using a famous philosopher's name to lend authority to whatever sort of AI-generated gibberish they're trying to package and sell to you. But let's set Machiavelli aside for a second and just focus on the advice itself. Is it any good? No, it's not. Because it mostly falls into three different slop buckets: the bad, the boring, and the nonsensical. So we'll go through each using examples from the videos. We'll start with the bad advice. And by this I mean advice that if you were to actually use it, you would just hurt people or embarrass yourself. Here's the first principle from that 7 Brutal Truths video. You must be completely psychologically whole before entering into a relationship with someone else. So the boring version of what's being said here is just like have hobbies, I guess, have a goal, have a life that's functional. This interpretation definitely makes it fall into the boring advice category. But the hyperbolic, upscaled version of it being sold to you in this video very quickly becomes bad advice. Because the argument that you need to be perfectly complete before you can join in a relationship with another is just logically contradictory. It refutes itself the moment you say it out loud. If you were complete, if you worked perfectly and had the perfect life before a potential partner entered into the sphere of your existence, then you wouldn't be looking for a partner. You wouldn't need one. And the reason why human beings seek companionship is because we are not complete on our own. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's the human condition. We crave companionship. Everybody knows this. All the great philosophers knew this. All the great religions of the world know this. The really dumb assumption here is that needing companionship or wanting to feel companionship is somehow in tension with being a functional adult. It's not. Wanting to spend your life with somebody, wanting to share your life with somebody is a perfectly natural, normal feeling to have. Of course, don't let it consume your life. Don't let your life's purpose be to find somebody to spend your life with. Have something to bring to the table, sure. But the standard of being psychologically complete 100% before even entertaining the possibility of being in a romantic relationship is just not the way things work. And before moving on to the more boring advice, I just want to revisit the idea of total self-acceptance once again as also really bad advice. If you totally accept yourself, including all of your flaws, then you have no reason to change. You have no reason to try and motivate yourself to be better. I thought the whole point of all these videos was to teach you how to improve yourself in a way that will lead you to greater heights. But if you just accept all of yourself, warts and all, without any desire to change or motivate yourself to be any better, then that defeats the purpose, doesn't it? So yeah, don't totally accept yourself if you have flaws. Try and fix them. And that's not living with a sense of false identity, that's just called being an adult. Now, the other slop bucket of advice we find in these videos is just boring advice. It's not wrong, it's just bog standard common sense, dressed up as Machiavellian wisdom. It's not. Another one from the 7 Truths video. Be sure to have an unshakable standard. Again, the hyperbolic version of this means be a jerk, be uncompromising, make sure that everybody knows what you think and that you'll never change your mind about anything. But the more mundane version of this is just have a little bit of confidence, have standards, enforce them, don't tolerate crazy amounts of disrespect. And sure, that just means walk around with some level of self-respect. Your high school guidance counselor probably told you this. The video just takes a totally normal, basic, boring piece of advice and cranks it up to 11 and makes it unrecognizably uncompromising and stupid. Another one that's fine but also boring is make sure that you have productive tension in a relationship. Make sure there's some friction in your relationship because total harmony doesn't lead to progress. And then it's only natural that 2 strong-willed individuals in a partnership will sometimes disagree. Duh. Couples disagree? Why is this news? Why is this advice? I don't get it. Another one is about maintaining a proportional investment in a relationship. So make sure that you don't end up putting too much of yourself into a relationship if it's doomed. If it seems like things are going well, give a little bit more. If it seems hopeless, don't give so much. This is fine. This is reasonable. This is also advice that any friend would give you if you seem to be obsessing about a hopeless or toxic relationship. And what Machiavelli has to do with any of this is just beyond me. I have no idea. There's nothing Machiavellian about any of this, aside from the fact that Machiavelli would probably agree with it because he has a modicum of common sense, maybe 2 or 3 modicums. I mean, it's just the advice to avoid the sunk cost fallacy. There's nothing Machiavellian about that. So finally, we get to the nonsensical advice. And I think some of this is just a result of the fact that a lot of these videos are written by AI, where you generate sentences using AI that have a grammatical structure and they seem like they make sense and they feel inspiring, but they actually don't communicate anything. So here's an example from a video called "Think About Yourself This Way and Watch the World Rearrange Itself For You," Machiavelli. And in the first couple minutes of this video, it rails against what it calls borrowed belief systems and false identities.
And while you listened, while you played by their rules and kept yourself small, someone else walked in, took your seat at the table, and never looked back. That is the cost of borrowed belief systems.
I mean, what even is a non-borrowed belief system? All of your beliefs and the systems that they form are borrowed from other people and things and institutions. They couldn't come from anywhere else. We get them from parents, teachers, books, friends, religion, you name it. There's no pristine inner you generating beliefs from first principles, untouched by any external source. And also, many borrowed belief systems are good. Don't murder people. That's a borrowed belief system. So is wash your hands and make your bed. And many self-generated belief systems lead to absolute catastrophe and horrifying crimes. So this critique is, if it makes any sense at all, just too general to have any sort of actionable advice to come from it. It has the appearance of wisdom with no actual content, which is basically what a lot of AI-generated writing has. Ask my students. It just gets you to nod along, which is the only thing it needs to do to get you to keep watching, and that's the point. These videos are just designed to harvest your attention, not to actually make you a better person. It's inspiration without substance, confidence without content. That's the engine of this genre. So as we wrap things up here, let me try and land the main points here with a little more weight. There's a lot of young men in crisis. And the audience that these videos are aimed at, young guys who feel adrift, undervalued, and don't have a roadmap for the kind of life that they want to live. That audience is real. And the difficulties they're facing are real. But what these videos do is take a real audience with real needs and desires and feeds them a hallucinated philosophy in the voice of an evil genius. And it's a great marketing trick, because the name Machiavelli still sells. It's secret, dangerous, unintuitive wisdom that can help you dominate any situation. It's pure snake oil. And it's the same brand promise of any forbidden knowledge that you find in any era throughout history. It's that wisdom the world doesn't want you to know. But at the end of the day, the content here is just empty calories. It's common sense at its best, and it's a manipulation playbook at its worst. But that doesn't matter. The brand Machiavelli does the work, and people watch. And the really sad part is that this audience deserves better. The stuff that's being sold to them is going to actively make their lives worse. You don't build a real partnership with somebody by training yourself to perform unavailability, or to think of the other person as a court that needs to be ruled. That's just a recipe for loneliness and alienation. So if you want to actually learn about Machiavelli, just go read The Prince. The Tim Parks translation of The Prince is totally fine. It's the one I quoted from earlier. It's clean, it's modern, and you can read actually any translation of Machiavelli online because the book has been translated so many times. Go find it on Project Gutenberg or Internet Archive. There are tons of different ways of accessing this book. Hell, I'll probably read it on this channel on one of my Let's Read Philosophy series. So my point is just don't be pulled in by this stuff. It's nonsense, it's dangerous, it's bad, and it has nothing to do with Machiavelli. You deserve better. There are better ways to start down the journey of self-improvement than listening to some AI-generated nonsense with a Machiavelli label stamped on it. Okay, so I guess that brings us to the end here. It's kind of my first rant video, I guess. I don't know. What do you think about all these AI slop videos? I mean, they're obviously bad, and thankfully YouTube is doing something about them as of late. But I really can't overstate how awful I think they are in terms of how toxic they are to a particularly vulnerable portion of the population. I mean, marketing really bad or nonsensical advice as esoteric secret wisdom is just awful. It's a recipe for disaster. So I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Frank Philosophy.